CEO of the organization, and as you can probably see, we are recording this webinar, as we are recording all webinars to allow for those who missed this opportunity to watch it later. And you can find the recording of previous webinars on the DigComp community of practice. So I would like to say just a few words about OR Digital, and maybe I share my slides quickly with you. So yeah, today we have our 5th webinar in the community of practice, in the DigComp community of practice on data literacy. And OR Digital is hosting the community of practice, which is hosting the DigComp 2.2 revision process. We are a pan-European association based in Brussels, representing 74 member organizations that work with 20,000 digital competence centers, providing training and support and advice to 1.5 million Europeans every year. And what we do is that we support all those people who need to develop their digital skills. And we believe that everyone needs to develop their digital skills and should be able to benefit from digital transformation. And we do our activities following our focus areas, including basic digital skills, advanced digital skills, digital media literacy, STEM skills for society, and also we are working on digital cultural heritage. And as I mentioned, we are hosting the community of practice for the digital competence framework, which really welcomes everyone who is interested in DigComp. And currently we have over 400 members. And for the purpose of the DigComp revision process, we established 12 working groups who are involved in the further development of the framework in collaboration with the European Commission Joint Research Center. And as you know, the aim of the revision process is to bring the DigComp framework more up to date by collecting and validating examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes to each competence. And many of you, if not all of you, are members of the COP, but if you know anyone who would like to join, feel free to invite them. And I would like to mention that the DigComp COP has gained a lot of visibility also from European Commissioner Maria Gabriel, who said that she was very grateful for our commitment for hosting the community of practice and supporting the update of the framework. And as part of this revision process and the activities in the working groups, we organize webinars every second Tuesday. Now it's becoming a habit, and now we have the 5th webinar on data literacy. And don't miss the next one on the 15th of June. And I mentioned that the recordings and presentations of the previous webinars are available in the schedule part of the community of practice. And well, finally, I would like to welcome the leader of the working group 2, data literacy, Juliana Raffaghelli, and who is leading the work of this working group. And she's the coordinator, the organizer of the webinar today, but we will also receive contributions from other experts presenting data literacy research and EU projects. And let me, you know them, but I would like to mention Rina Vurikari, who is the leader of the DigComp 2.2 revision process, and she is with us today, as well as Stefano Kluser, who is the moderator of the community. So by wishing you an interesting webinar, I would like to give the floor to Juliana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this introduction. And we organized this webinar with the aim of generating a space for debate on data literacy and the data literacy needs within the EU educational area and social area, in connecting not only the very relevant skills we have within our working group, but also connecting to the leaders of EU projects. So we are going to spot relevant practices across EU member states for then open to the validation of some of the statements came out within the working group. So I'm gonna hand over quickly to our first expert, Professor Barbara Wasson, and her presentation on her LED project. So since this is a community of practice, we are going to introduce our work very informally and to open for the debate later on. As for the session, we will start with the presentation, and then we will have a space for debate, and we'll move to the validation of the data literacy statement. So Barbara, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Barbara, you're muted.
Hi, okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Barbara Wasson. I'm a professor of information science at the University of Bergen in Norway, and I'm also director of the National Center for the Science of Learning and Technology, which is a center that is focused on focused on learning analytics. And I have worked on data literacy projects with teachers and students in schools. So that's where I experience from. But I'm invited here today because I've been participating a little bit in working group 2, but also I'm leading the Erasmus Plus project, DALI, Data Literacy for Citizenship. Okay. Oh. In DALI, our goal is to empower adults for responsible citizenship and civic engagement in terms of data by acquiring and developing key competencies related to data literacy. And our impact is that we're hoping to raise awareness for data and its use and increase data literacy in European citizens. And we want to provide educational materials for use in non-formal learning contexts that are tied and tested with the target stakeholder groups and made available for free under a Creative Commons access. In this Erasmus project, it's a strategic partnership for adult education. And University of Bergen, we're coordinating. We have partners at Coventry, at Friedrich Alexander University, Erlangen-Nuremberg, Universitat de les Îles Balears, and University of Murcia. And Linda's here in our group. She's from Murcia. She's here today too. And we have a number of associated partners in this project. And from Norway, we have the Pensjonistforbund, which is the Association for Pensionists. And we have Competence Norway, which is Directorate for Lifelong Learning. From Spain, we have the Enchaos Initiative, Jobs 4.0, Faro Digital, the Basque Coalition for Digital Skills. We have a member of parliament from the Balearic Islands and the Office for the Education of the Employment in Ibiza. And in German, we have 2 associations that are carrying out adult education. And in the United Kingdom, we have the City of Coventry's University Council Library Service. And I wanted to motivate a little bit from this. Now, I'm using examples from me, why I think data literacy is important in countering things. In Norway, the tax system changed a number of years ago, and especially for senior citizens, which is part of our target group. This changed such that you didn't have to fill out your taxes anymore. They were filled out for you. And if you didn't make any changes to it, then your taxes are already submitted. So you don't have to submit your taxes anymore. And if you think about how much time you spent on your taxes before digital systems, this is completely turning it around. Your taxes are basically done for you. Now all you're doing is accepting it. So this idea that all this data comes from everywhere in Norway in public sector and governmental and your workplace, and if you're paying to daycare, etc., suddenly appears in this document was quite a new way to think. And especially that you don't have to submit it, you just have to agree to it. You don't even have to agree. If you do nothing, it's submitted for you. The other thing, and now in Norway, we are very, very digital. So everything health services is also very digital. So you book an appointment this way, you can have a video consultation, you can ask for a new prescription, etc. So this as well is very into the personal life area of people. So it's very requiring a high level of digital and data literacy. We also have parents that are responsible for the use of social media data for their children. So everybody, all adults that have children have this responsibility, and it's very difficult to understand this. People think you can just be on there and monitor, but these kids get new social media platforms every day. It's changing all the time, and the data, where is it going, etc., and trying to explain that also to children and being aware of that. We also had in Norway a big discussion around the smittestop, which is the tracing of the coronavirus. And that also raised a lot of civic engagement, actually, because in fact, they had to stop the first version of this because of the data and where the data was being held. And it was very confusing for people to understand why this was being stopped, etc., why it wasn't meeting the data protection standards, etc. So this actually impacted everybody's life in our country. We also have parents' responsibility where it's related to the school use of digital tools, and they're afraid that the data is being used for profiling. So here we have one parent group that is refusing to let their children use the Google, and you have these Google pages that are probably 13 pages long that explain data literacy and what it's about. And that's really difficult to expect everybody to be able to read these kinds of, so there has to be some way we can explain these data literacy things as well to everyday people. And then we have in a professional life, I use this example in Norway because this one for me really got me interested in data literacy for more than just, say, teachers using digital tools. It was a case here in Bergen where the municipality used an app that communicated between the schools and the parents. And there was a misunderstanding in the the municipality about what happens when you update information. So they were manually updating, they had manually updated information to allow data to be shared only with those that are allowed to. So let's say a parent that was not allowed to know where their child was living. That was already manually worked in the system. But then they did an update from our national registry of people, and it overwrote everything that had been manually put into the system. So this meant that the people in the community didn't realize and didn't understand that the data was now, the data sharing was now changed in this application. And we ended up with, in this case here was a parent who got information about children that were not his. We had mothers sleeping with baseball bats beside their bed because the father found out where they were living, etc. So it was a real problem for people that have to know about data security, which is to me a part of data literacy as well. So here in your job life, you don't have to be the person who works with the data, but sometimes you have to be able to ask the good questions and maybe stop things from happening that work with data. Okay, so if we go into our project, what we're doing very quickly is that we have 5 different IOs. We just started in January, so we haven't come very far, and we're working on a conceptual framework, which we're calling the DALI framework, which is about data literacy, and I'll show you how far we've come there just in a couple of minutes. We also are looking at the learning approach. We're using a networked and playful way to approach this. So we're going to have a toolkit for playful learning to learn about data literacy. And then we'll have a framework for implementation and policy guidelines and recommendations. So what we're doing so far is we're working on the data literacy framework. So I got in contact with this project just because it's very relevant for the work that we're doing as well, but also maybe some of our work will be relevant back the other way. So we're carrying out a systematic literature review, we're doing a Delphi study of experts, and we're defining personas that can help us identify the stakeholders in our adult group. In the data literacy review, we have 1,293 articles currently, and we're going through these, and right now screening on title and abstract, so we haven't come to any final conclusions here about what articles are being included, but we also identified a number of articles that we thought were really good examples of data literacy articles here. The majority of our work has been going on in trying to identify our DALI framework, and we've been through 3.5 rounds of this Delphi study. In the first one, we were to identify influential frameworks, identify basic elements, add to our bibliography. The second round, we were looking at the relationship of our elements with DigCom, in which we thought the elements that we think are important to include are included there, and defining a little bit more our basic elements. In the third round, we're working on the skills associated to the elements that we have and defining our levels, and then we will finalize the framework within the next month. So this is our framework. We'll look a little bit closer. We have 3 themes: data conceptualization, data action, and data participation. In the first one, we're into what data awareness, what data are, what forms they can take and how it can be used, understanding how to identify, locate, and use data sets, public data sets, APIs, understanding what these things are, ethics and privacy, we all know what that is, and then critical analyzing and discussing about data and data tactics, data productivity, and taking own decisions. And this is at a very low level. It's at a conceptualization level. When we go to the next level, data action, this is more understanding about data sources, going a bit deeper, data types and how these data can be collected from different environments, all the different kinds of multimodal data we collect, from surveillance cameras to what's being collected on your app to other things like the examples I've given. And we think there should be something a little bit about administration of data, about managing data, where is your data being kept? You can go to Facebook even and find out what data they have on you, etc. And then about communicating, synthesizing, visualizing, representing data, and very much misunderstandings there are often about understanding visualizations and how to act on them. And I think I like the thing during Corona that everybody knows what flatten the curve is now. So people are interested now in data in a different way, probably. And then we have the data participation, which goes more towards the civic engagement, but also has the policy and regulations related to it, and aspects like that. Proactive engagement with data, how you can use data for, and in fact, in a lot of the articles that are coming up in our literature review, these kinds of examples are here, very much data engagement through data, and taking your own decisions based on critical consideration of data. So that's our framework and how far we've come so far. But one thing that I want to say that I'm not 100% sure that the framework captures, and this is what I refer to as this, in Norway we would call it data race, and how data travels from when it's collected through applications, changing things and coming out the other end. A little bit more technical perspective on this. And this has to do with trust, and it has to do with accepting that data is being used for good purposes as well, but also being aware of the challenges with regards to security, false data, of things like that. Just being able to understand that data starts somewhere and it travels, it gets stored somewhere, it gets used by algorithms and comes out the other end. And I'm not 100% sure that I want to look more closely whether we capture this in the model. Okay, so that's my presentation. If you're interested in being in touch with us, you can contact us on our website, DALI EU, and I have an email address there.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Perfectly in time. And now we move from Norway to Mediterranean Europe to listen to Andrea Nelson Mauro, who's going to present the very interesting approaches from Data Ninja, and keep on building this EU perspective and big picture on data literacy. So the floor is yours, Andrea, please.
So thank you. So thank you for the invitation and thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here. Let me a few seconds to share my screen that you should see now in the full screen view. Am I right? Okay. So thanks again. So first of all, I apologize for this title, but it was very difficult to synthesize it. I'm Andrea Nelson Mauro. I'm from Data Ninja, and we are working on Erasmus projects in the field, focus on the field of data literacy. But let me start from the beginning. We are an Italian SME. We were born in 2012 as an informal group of passionates or practitioners, and we worked this way up to 2015. At the beginning of 2016, we founded this company, and from the beginning up to this day of our activities, we already worked in the field of data literacy, data training programs, with a very wide range of actors at any level, from schools to companies to public institutions and so on. So at the end of these experiences, we have defined a kind of general vision to arrange our activities, to arrange a way that the mind of our activities, that is the one that you can see in my screen now. We try to help people live better by using data. We help people in 3 different ways. The first one is the Data Ninja School, that is a platform, online platform for providing students such as professionals, practitioners, and so on, in dealing with data through educational content. That this is a kind of marketplace, so you can buy your course and do your self-paced learning with the support, online support by our tutors, our teachers. This platform was established in 2019, and at the second turn of his birthday, we have now several thousands of students. So it was surprising that kind of interest that citizens, that practitioners in the Italian market got in the platform. So the second area, the second pillar of our activities, the second one in the screen, the Data Ninja Edu, that is a kind of different approach to address youngsters and secondary schools, but schools at large. We are managing a project called Open the Box, where the model is different than the previous one, because in the Data Ninja School you can learn how to use data and improve your competence and use it in your work. In the second one, in the Data Ninja Edu sector, we help teachers in schools with a training of trainers model to teach teachers to spread data literacy and media literacy competence among their students. So this is a kind of multiplier effect. And the third pillar of our activities is the Data Ninja Lab, that is a kind of IT sector, IT units, where we try to create software solutions to leverage the power of data. So for instance, we have created a kind of tool that creates automatic articles based on structured data for some Italian newspapers. In our activities, in our work, since the beginning, we have tried to improve a kind of continuous development model in order to cope with the continuous changing framework of dealing with data. So on one end, you have classical skills, basic skills to, I don't know, just to, as for instance, to deal with raw data, with the spreadsheet and so on. But on the other end, you have to face the challenge of different tools, the different quantity of data, the different quality. So the need is the need of upgrading, updating your educational content is very huge, and we are trying to create a kind of continuous approach in improving our content. So this is the reason, because we are working on the research research field, and we are now involved in the 4 Erasmus Plus projects, as you can see in the screen, from the beginning to the bottom one. DataLit is a project focused on providing students to near to the degree in experiencing some tasks with data literacy. So, for instance, if you are near to choose your internship in a company, you can deal with this kind of pilots with data literacy. Then you can bring with yourself the acquired competencies. Daedalus, the second one, is the basic level for the for students, university students, in the first or second year of their university experience. These 2 projects started on 2020, while the last 2, data literacy, data literate and DALFIS, started a few months ago. The last 2 are focused on secondary schools with 2 different approaches. The first one, data literacy, is coordinated by Vilnius universities, and we as Data Ninja and another company from Portugal, we are working in the creation of these educational pathways. And the fourth one is DALFIS, that is coordinated by an Italian school with the supervision by the Italian CNR to promote a curriculum and course content towards STEM education. So at large, we are a partner of these 4 Erasmus Plus projects. So we are a kind of, very interesting point of view to see what is happening at in different countries. In these 4 projects, we are 37 partners with different kind of souls. So, for instance, we have university, SME, secondary schools, research centers, and training centers. In the map in the right of my screen, you can see the different countries that are involved. This is the timeline of our activities. 2018 is the year of the establishing of the idea, because the idea was born by a series of discussions between us and expert researchers of the CNR, the National Research Council of Italy, and it wouldn't be possible to have this development without his help. Then his name is Davide Taibbi, and is an Italian researcher with a strong and long expertise in the field of data literacy. After preliminary researches, we have decided to create that kind of proposal for this project. And as you may see in the screen, the project started, the first one in 2020, the first group in 2020, the second group in the 2021. Through our activities with these partners at different levels, we have now evidences, a series of evidences that I can share with you today, just in a quick fly among them. First one is obviously there is a huge interest at any level of business research of data literacy. So, for instance, we can we are witnessing a very wide interest from very small companies, for instance, with 2 or 3 persons working, from the bigger one, such as, for instance, IT companies and telco companies. So the interest about the topic is not for a kind of expert audience, but it's very wide. And we witnessed also that due to the pandemic, probably this path is accelerating in terms of towards information issues, in terms of the concerns, for instance, by teachers, school teachers, that having some knowledge on how to deal with data is important for students to avoid fake news, to avoid misinformation, and so on. So this connection, it was not so clear when we have started this discussion in 2018. While now, due to the pandemic, it seems very parallel in a certain way. Another point that we are witnessing is that there is a lack in terms of definition. What does it mean data literacy in Serbia or in Lithuania or in Italy or in Portugal? This is a very it could seem a strange question, but it's real. In some countries you have not translations, for instance, and there is not a common sense of what data literacy means. And again, we have managed a questionnaire with different participants in one of these projects, and you can see in this slide key findings. Confusion regarding soft skills and functional competencies, organizations that do not promote the acquisition, the development of this kind of competencies, the lack of the use of validation tools, for instance, and the lack of certifications, curriculum, and way to assess these competencies. And probably also the need to create some awareness on the existing tools to acquire and develop data literacy related competencies. And
Andrea, we are close to the time. I mean, so
yeah, I finished. In this slide, you can see the sector that we witnessed in terms of the use of data literacy competencies. So not only tech and science or finance, for instance, but also in a kind of increasing way, also communication, journalism, and activism. And this is the line that a kind of basic competencies line from find to arrange to analyze and to present your data, from a basic level of competencies to an higher one. So I think that is all.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So I wish to ask to the audience, while I invite Professor Leo von Audenhove and now we travel to Belgium from South Europe to, again, North Europe, to share his slides. And while we move to Leo's presentation, I wish to emphasize the very various constellation, the constellation of various practices covered under the term data literacy, the concept of data literacy, and also, I mean, the constellation of data practices, and instead the concurrent perspective on the needs in the society to achieve skills to deal with it. So thank you very much, Andrea. And now, please, Leo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope that I'm unmuted. Yeah, okay. Good.
Everything perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Leo van Audenhove. I'm a professor for communication studies at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels and at the University of the Western Cape in South Africa. And this year I also had special professorship at the University de Namur. But I'm also the director of MediaWise. And MediaWise is the Knowledge Center for Digital and Media Literacy in Flanders. It's a media literacy organization that is fully financed by the Flemish government. We do have also European projects. And our goal is to make Flemish citizens more media literate. So we have 12 full-time employees that develop content, curricula, policy in relation to media literacy. We focus on the whole population, but yeah, we have a quite strong focus on education and young people. Within MediaWise, we've worked on data literacy for quite a while and worked around these questions of, okay, is there a need for data literacy? If we talk about data literacy, what competences do we think of? But also, how do we integrate this in media literacy projects we have? And how do we integrate this in primary and secondary education curricula? Now, let me say something about the current discussions and how we see this. In the current discussions on data literacy, there's a very strong focus of being able to use data, being able to use data, take action based on data, ethically use data. And you see sometimes a very utilitarian approach. The idea that with data we can solve societal problems through the use of data. The idea that we have strongly to enhance concrete data skills of pupils, that we can augment employment opportunities in a data-fied society. And there's nothing wrong with these types of approaches, but we think that we need a more balanced approach to data literacy, and we propose a definition that yeah, talks about the knowledge, skills, attitudes to actively, creatively, critically and consciously being able to use data, but also to understand data. And if we talk about understanding data, this also means, what does this mean for society and what is the societal impact of data? With, of course, the aim, I already heard active citizenship, and that's also something that we think is very important. People should be able to actively, autonomously take part in a data-fied society in social, economic, and political life. We've developed our own competence model that kind of reflects this duality between using data and understanding data. And if we talk about using data, we're talking about being able to interpret, being able to read a graph, a table, a list of data, and understand what this means. Being able to navigate, finding your way through different collections, different types of data, and how they're processed, and how we can extract information, messages from that. Collecting, being able to set up a process of collecting raw data, organize this and analyze this yourself, and then presenting, being able to present and visualize the results of data in a targeted manner. Now, you've already noticed that we take a different approach than a lot of the literature out there, because we take a literacy perspective, and we start by interpreting, navigating, collecting, presenting, which is the same or in line with reading, understanding, and working with it. In the scientific discussion, you very often find first identifying, collecting, evaluating, analyzing, presenting. We think that identifying, collecting are very high level skills. And especially if we talk about basic education, secondary education, we think it's better to start with interpreting and navigating skills, and that we build up from that in the curriculum. On the other side, we have understanding data, where we have more classical aspects of being able to observe how things work, being able to analyze. And then, for instance, analyze is also what is the social consequences of data in society. Are these consequences, are they harmful or are they constructive? And how can we mitigate harm, which is reflecting, being able to reflect on your own behavior, on other people's behavior, on the role of data, and whether this is contributing to a just society, and how we can actually minimize harmful consequences. If we think about, okay, where is this situated in the curriculum? I think data literacy is a difficult one because it's very interdisciplinary, and that means that working in a curriculum on data literacy touches upon a lot of different disciplines. If we talk about using data, we're talking about STEM, we're talking about numeric literacies like mathematics and statistics, logics, but also research competencies. In the last 2 years of secondary education, last 3 years, we also work on research competencies in the secondary education, going into higher education. This is a nice area, I think, where data literacy and the aspect of using data would fit. If we talk about understanding data, we talk about language competences, social science subjects, humanities subjects, and the efforts in Flanders we have around data literacy and media literacy, which is becoming part of the basic and secondary curriculum in Flanders. Anyway, it's an end competence which will start to be integrated in the curriculum from September onwards. So we have nice anchor points, and the nice thing is that a lot of schools are thinking at the moment in Flanders how to renew their curriculums to take into account these new computer and media literacy competences that they have to integrate in the curriculums. A lot of scientific literature, and this surprises me a bit, starts from this assumption that if you work on using data, that this will automatically also leads to understanding data. And this is something we don't agree with. We think there's no scientific evidence to support this claim that if you work on data, if people have skills to use data, that this automatically also leads to a reflection of what the societal impact is. So we think that we need to work on both of these competence clusters, and that means that we really also need an interdisciplinary dialogue on how to integrate this, because we already know that, for instance, STEM teachers don't always have the right capacities also to teach on understanding data. So we need this interdisciplinary dialogue to really integrate the whole aspect of datafication of society into the curriculum. What do? We have different educational packages. We have an EduBox on artificial intelligence. This is an interactive course material that schools can use. We develop this content together with different partners like Technopolis, but also the public broadcaster, which makes all our videos, and all the part of the interactive material is made by the public broadcaster. By the way, a public broadcaster which in Flanders also has the obligation to work on media literacy. So it's a natural partner for us to work on these types of educational materials. We have the same EduBox on data in news media, where we work on data journalism, methods of data journalism, and we have do-it-yourself packages to become a data journalist, to integrate data journalism in some of the school tasks kids need to perform. We have a booklet which is focused on educators, on how do you integrate data literacy in your course, focus on teachers, how to make youngsters data literacy, tips and tricks for the classroom, and the content goes into algorithms, cookies, data collection, privacy, data use, etc. Once a year, we have a week where we reach a large number of 5th to 6th year kids, or 5th and 6th year of primary education. So these kids are between 10 and 12, where we have a huge project where we reach around 30,000 pupils. Also there we now organized an escape game, which is fully based on data literacy and data literacy skills. And then together with VUB and IMEC, we have a data bus, which is a 13-meter electric bus packed with screens, packed with sensors, data applications. that we drive to schools in Brussels, and the bus stays there for 1 or 2 days. There is a week of preparation with the kids, of educational materials, of workshops which are organized. The bus arrives, and then there's 1 week after the bus has arrived of again workshops that can be taken, that are rolled out in these different schools. At the moment, we have 7 workshops. You see for the age between 12 and 18 or 10 and 18 on online privacy, digital balance, data journalism, environmental data. So the kids can collect themselves environmental data about air pollution, temperatures at their schools, and they learn how to interpret this, about artificial intelligence, bias in algorithms, and personalization of content. If you map, for instance, the databuzz on our competence model, you see that we mainly focus for the moment on understanding data. So that means that we still have a lot of work to do to also develop educational packages on using data. And for the moment, only 2 of our projects really encompass all of these competences that we have identified. So we want to develop more projects on using the, data. Something that we have for media literacy. For media literacy, we have a learning line, which from kindergarten to the end of secondary education specifies per year, per grade, what kids should know about media literacy. Our ambition is also to develop this for data literacy. That's from kindergarten to the end of secondary education. Teachers know what skills and competences they could work on. And we also provide the resources for schools to work on these specific competences over all of these ages. Thank you very much. I published a special edition of the Journal of Media Literacy Education last year on data literacy and education, where we reflect on data literacy in the educational sphere. And you can always reach me, and please visit our website if you have questions. Happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. A very resourceful and insightful presentation. And I couldn't agree more on the relevant distinction you made about an instrumental approach to data literacy and the need of developing critical perspective on data, and how this is composed through an interdisciplinary approach to data practices, data narratives, and then to the development of projects on data literacy that are very well shown in your practices. So, and I think, I mean, this issue and this concern was also present on Barbara's and Andrea's presentation throughout their different approaches to connecting the problem with the needed literacy. So I'm going to share my presentation, which is the last one. I'm going to be shorter because I have, I mean, a more conceptual presentation, and I beg you to start posting your questions through the chat, and I mean, sharing all your thoughts and concerns. Please do feel free to use that space. So here we go. Can you see the presentation? Okay, great. So in this presentation, my claim is that data literacy is a complex issue, something that I think came out through the other 3 presentations. And we need to address the practices to live well with data, because datafication and advanced use of digital data is here to stay. So one initial problem is that we are asking ourselves where data is going from where it comes and from where data arrive. And if we focus these two images, what we are going to see is that something that generated a lot of concern, which is a bias in the use of facial recognition. And the several questions arose from that type of situation, that the scandal of Cambridge Analytica and other types of problems, where can the public services or private services use AI system training over private data extracted from social media? Can we adopt all sort of data for specific and contextualized services? We didn't pay too much attention to how data was captured and used in the era of Web 2.0. Because we were too much focused on the pro-social web, and our eyes were in the utopia of a free internet. And then we didn't pay attention that what was happening with data. And nevertheless, I mean, what we cannot neglect is that the artificial intelligence industry can solve incredibly complex challenges. In this case of facial recognition, this example, I mean, we cannot neglect the fact that through facial recognition, there are developments to search for lost children or to prevent public security risks. So it's like a sort of dilemma. And that was captured on the literature, like a wave of enthusiasm, where particularly there was a focus on public data and the use of open data for social innovation. And then the possibility of doing amazing things with amazing quantities of data being collected, like in the book Everybody Lies, like, for example, epidemiological research. And we have seen through the pandemic that data sharing in science is incredibly crucial. But then we witness a wave of delusion relating the way data was being adopted by private companies. And the pandemic was a particularly good example of this, the platformization, so to say, of education, and the problems of introducing a private service within a public sphere, which is education. So, like, for just as an example, and these are discussed in the literature, like algorithms of oppression or surveillance capitalism or automating inequalities. And then, of course, this problem is also under the spotlights here in Europe, because one problem we have is a sort of conundrum of strike a balance in understanding how to deal with the privacy, the problems of private data usage, and the development of data flows that allow Europe to thrive in the industry of artificial intelligence. And this is captured in the policy report, European Digital Infrastructure and Data Sovereignty. This is a real problem, because whereas, for example, China and the US are using and are investing in data flows and the possibility of using the data they capture through big platforms like TikTok in the case of China, and Google, of course, in the case of the US. In the European, context, it is very relevant, the data protection, and through the regulations we already know well. So in this context, the idea of data literacy is very relevant, because as my three colleagues pointed out, we need to understand data from a technical point of view, but we also need to understand data from an ethical and political point of view. And I did an analysis of 20 data literacy frameworks, and what I come up with was that whereas very initial, there was, the problem of numeracy and statistical literacy has been dealt since the 50s. There are publications around the need of understanding statistics, and there are, national reports around numeracy, but more recently, the issue of digital data has entered into the debate. And the initial publications related the information cycle, like how do we collect, manage, analyze, and represent data by using not only basic graphics, but also advanced data visualization. And then through several works, particularly the MIT through the Civic Media Lab has been very active with Raul Bargava and Catherine D'Ignacio in promoting a critical approach. Also Pangrassi and Selwyn in Australia, they are working on the idea of personal data literacies. And a very other important contribution is Renee Hobbs, which is she is an academic, a very relevant academic in the field of media education. So we have several perspectives, but a rather fragmentary panorama. And what we need in this situation is to tie loose ends, a sort of building and seeing the complex picture. And we need an interdisciplinary, global and local dialogue to contextualize data practices and the needed literacies. So this is my personal account around data literacy and my practices and studies around data literacy through 5 years national funded project, and my focus is on higher education, but I am also networking with an Erasmus Plus focus on school, developing critical digital literacies for the teachers, and human data interaction funded project, Data Praxis and Politics. I am also in contact with the Association of Media Education to cultivate and to understand a media education perspective on data, and also with Faro Digital and the University of Barcelona, and discussing how the educators can delve, and also with Linda Castañeda, we started a conversation relating data literacy and advancing practices relating this. And through my research activities and some, workshops with educators in discussing and interpreting personal situations at school within the educational practice around data, what I came up with was that there, at the very beginning there was an instrumental and technical approach to data literacy, and then some projects started to spot the problem of a critical approach to data literacy and to empower the citizens to use the public good of open data, but also to understand data in the society, and also to understand pedagogical use of data, the students' data, how should be implemented, and also as at the level of school management. And there there are very interesting works relating data justice and the global South and the South and North perspective around data. So, and also data feminism. through a number of webinars, I collected several perspectives in what it appeared to me a very fragmented panorama. And that happened across 2019 and 2020. And as I said, through the workshops, with the educators, not only for the educators, but with the educators, we started to analyze the possibility of thinking data as something that should be, I mean, we have to live through the data infrastructures and to learn to live well with data. And then I also pursued with a study in a wider study, mapping practices in higher education. And again, what happened was that the educators pointed out or highlighted the problem of an awareness of the platforms that are being used, how data is being collected, and more focus on traditional data practices. So this was something that I used in across the workshops and as a sort of heuristic tool. By crossing two variables or two tensions in this quadrant graph, proaction and reaction, which is the data approaches, the mindsets we approach data, being proaction, an approach data that is very positive, and it's embraced by those that are very engage in the area of data science, particularly those that are skilled and tech savvy, whereas reaction is more frequent in those that have a social perspective and a broader analysis of the problem of data in the society and the impact of data in the society. And I cross this tension with private public access to data and to place with the educators the several data practices we were discussing on and the type of approaches we needed to engage with these practices in a positive way. Not, for example, in the upper quadrant, not only to read, but also to appropriate and produce creatively with open data, something that was said by, for example, Andrea, and analyze and participate in the definition of data structures critically to avoid domination, something that was present particularly in Barbara's examples in the Norwegian society and also from Leo. So in this regard, here we see that we have 4 types of data literacies that we can cultivate. And this is something that we came up with and we discussed also through our working group on data literacy. In Europe, there has been a very fast progress since 2019, and this was shown by my colleagues. There are several projects covering several types and levels of education and practices in private sectors, public sectors, and connecting elder engagement with data and children's problems and issues connecting to data. We must acknowledge that our colleagues in Australia and North America and the UK have been very active, and there are also some projects in South America. This is a map that I am working on, and this is a sort of tool for the educators to focus on something that we need to build an EU perspective, basing on the tools and the instruments, the debates at the European level. We need to move to a phase where we discuss with the educators the need of living these smart environments, from the designing, the implementation and the evaluation of educational projects, and also relating the awareness, a better awareness on the infrastructure, the relevance, for example, of open source, an open source movement in the EU. And also we need to focus the expected impacts on learners, not only to develop educational projects, but also analyze the impact. And this is where the DIGCOM could make a very relevant contribution. And last but not least, we need to think about the accountability and trust to support the development of skills in connection, this very much with all the deliverables of the high-level group on AI, because data literacy is moving from the more traditional approaches to something that is lying behind all the AI developments. So a participatory system will help us to correct the ethical bias, but also to be creative around data. So to strike a balance between negative and positive use of data and live well with data. Thank you very much. And I see the chat has been very active. There was something in Spanish there, and I'm going to stop my share presentation and open to the questions and the debate. I see there are lots of comments relating the development, and here are some specific questions to Barbara. For example, the first one, you mentioned that you also reviewed the DIGCOM competences for your work. Was there some that you found more pertinent for your project than others?
I think we're in the process of doing this, as I've answered there. Linda, you're here leading this work, actually. If you want to add something, you're welcome to say. But I think we see both this, if you remember my framework, we see the understanding of data, the more technical, which is also in your framework. We see the action on the data, and then we see the civic engagement, I think. So we are a little bit parallel. That has come out of our work. And yeah, Linda?
The only thing that I would add is that in DALI, our idea is looking on the Leo presentation that I think is very, very close to us, at least to our perspective, is that we consider that using and understanding are transversal each other. So even if you are not doing things, you are doing things with data. So we are trying to think this as a transversal thing, and especially we're trying to take into account that after the last definition of data literacy, of digital literacy in 2018, the perspective of digital literacy is completely different in terms of critical approach. We decided to use the DIGCOM areas as a double road for analyzing the aspects, the elements, the explicit elements of DALI framework 2 and the relationship with the areas of DIGCOM, and also on the other side, how the areas of DIGCOM can help us in the framework of data literacy.
Yeah, I would only add the other thing that I would add, which is not 100% related, well, it is related to our project, but not inside our project, is that I see in Norway, at least, the data protection agencies are very active within the area of AI, and then that brings the data very, as you mentioned, Juliana, in your project. I think AI is pushing this area to be more critical, especially because teachers get these tools, if we take teachers, and then they don't know if the privacy and security issues are taken care of, where the data is coming from, where it's disappearing to, how it's being processed. So I think that this area becomes more and more important.
Yes, actually, media education spots the problem of data manipulation, and from the very beginning in media education, all across the media, like for example, fake news, the usage of data visualization in fake news, and somehow biased perception of data as something objective. And this is the very beginning of the problem, because AI system are based on a socio-technical structure, on concepts that are developed through a material procedures to analyze, to label data, and then to write down the algorithms. And this is one of the issues that have to be dealt with from the very beginning, from statistical understanding, data visualization, and then moving to AI system, but also relating data privacy, because these are like two separate but convergent problems that we have been discussing in our working group. I see, let me pass to another, I saw a question for Leo. I think it was from Rina. Did you define, Leo, did you define some learning outcomes or statements of knowledge skills in your framework? Is there something that you would want to discuss for the new version, the version?
Yeah, no, it's something that is on our radar, that we know that we need to do. We just applied for funding to do these things. Not just learning outcomes. As I said, we have a learning line, and there we have for media literacy, really from kindergarten to secondary education. We have what we think are necessary competences. We would like to do this for data literacy as well, because this gives a lot of educators really a hands-on of what they can do within their school. So that is really needed to convince teachers to start using some of the resources and to actually work with resources. That's one aspect we want to develop. The second aspect we want to develop is tools to actually measure data literacy competence, because that's then the next step, and that's also not there yet. But we don't have a clue about data literacy competences at the moment in basic education and secondary education. So we have a whole process sketched out of what we want to do, but for the moment we don't have this. But in the next month, I'm really happy. I was going to write a couple of articles on this, so I'm really happy also to look at DigiComp and reflect on that from what we've already done.
That's great. And moving forward, we have, the working group on data literacy developed about 60 requirements or 30 scenarios, and then 60 statements relating data literacy. And that's basing on the discussion that came out within the group relating the complexity embedded in data literacy. As umbrella term, as we all four have pointed out, it's a complex term. We must acknowledge the fact that it covers a very wide constellation of practices. And then the tools we will design and apply from the DigiComp to point two will have to, focus, because you can focus the information process like what you do, as I think Andrea pointed out, at, for example, collecting, managing, analyzing, and representing data. Or either way, you can focus, like, for example, at the DigiComp areas like the information step, communication and collaboration area, digital content creation. You create content, you can create content based on data, like, for example, the case of open data, and safety relating personal data literacies, and problem solving relating the many situations using and capturing data when using AI. This is a discussion that came out from our working group, and I think we are arriving to a concurrent point, the need of tools. So I think
I would like to maybe add to that all the discussions that Juliana has had in the group and around this conceptualization of work for DCOMP update. I think there's so much more rich material in your work, Juliana, and exactly sort of a conceptual thinking that we cannot add all of that necessarily in the DCOMP competence, but I think it can be added to the discussion, the generic discussion at the European level about digital literacy as such. You know, there's, I think DCOMP is now just one sort of a lens or filter that we are doing these statements both for data literacy and AI. There's so much more in that competence in general. So this is a little bit of a squeezing something out that is, yeah, just something for this framework particularly that we can put, but there's so much more outside of it. That's at least my understanding currently. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. I think we need to focus, and this is because we need an EU perspective, because the problem is so complex and there are so many approaches. Like, for example, in our working group, there was a lot of document sharing at the beginning, and there was a lot of concern relating the role of educators and data literacy for educators. And then we had to focus on the statements that would work for the DigComp framework, and we need that lens to approach data literacy across the EU. Member states, and also to respond to the working documents on AI. And AI, we all know, is having a fast pace of development, and we need tools both to work at the educational level and at lifelong learning level. I see Tatiana. Which definitions do you have in mind? Is it some of the work in progress documents that we already having, or something different? Tatiana, I think she's
I'm here.
Asking to Dali. Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, not only digital literacy, but much more beyond, which refer to DigComp 2.2. And this is what we are struggling on the country level also, because each one understands different terminology differently a little bit. And it means that if you understand it differently, you make different actions regarding this, right? And therefore, just my idea was to clarify not only in terms of data literacy, but all other terminology which occurs in DigComp 2.2.
Are you familiar that we have defined some of the terms already in that 2.0? Do you recall that document?
Sure.
So some of those would need to be updated. That what you are thinking? Or
yeah.
I'll be interested in hearing which one, because this is exactly the right moment to input that kind of information.
We will need more time for this.
I understand, yeah.
But I'm also thinking, you see, I've been attending group 7 and now your group, and I'm observing that each group is digging deeper, and the amount of information for each competency is growing. And I think the challenge will be how to make it crispy and shorter and still big enough for each citizen, for each person to still to understand and use it efficiently. The information is huge. Just yes. The more we dig deeper, the bigger information for the DigComp is.
Yes,
that's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Juliana, but like the beauty of DigComp framework, which we always get, let's say, congratulated for, is that we have kept it very simple. So we do have to keep it still simple. And I think now we are growing, and then we have to kind of come back and make it fine line and simple. But I think a lot of the material, like you said, that we're digging deeper, even if it's not in the framework itself, we can use it to create support material and possible training material and so on. So there's like all that knowledge that have been dug out, let's say so far, that could be used for some other purposes too, multi-purpose.
Yes, if you, we had planned a very brief discussion on the statements, data literacy statements, some of the data literacy statements. And if you are okay, Rina, I would share very briefly the work of the working group too on data literacy for all the people here to appreciate the complexity we have to deal with, and we have been working with through our working group. And I didn't do this alone. Let me also mention the people that has been engaging very carefully as editors. And one relevant thing is here you can see that we were 40 participants, and we collected 51 resources, literature resources. We all contributed very actively, so because I mean, referring to publications and working documents produced by their own members, I mean the members, the participants within the group. And then we generated 32 requirements, like scenarios of practice, data practices that are common for a normal EU citizen. And we discussed very much what a normal citizen would need, because our technological members pushed towards data scientists and that sort of profiles. And instead, there was a group working in the area of education that was too much focused on educators' data literacy. And we had to make an exercise to generate requirements connected to knowledge, skills, and attitude. That was the initial purpose by Rina and Stefano. And we generated 69 knowledge statements, 67 skills statements, and 30 attitude statements. And then we engaged it. This is what happened while moving to the step 3. We engaged in a intergroup discussion by Rina's invitation, and we started contributing on AI, IoT, Internet of Things, data privacy, and health and well-being, and finding several overlaps. And then we came up with 25 statements, and the group grew up to 54 participants. So that was what happened. At the beginning, we clustered the several data practices and requirements in 6 clusters: technical data literacy, data visualization, informing professional practices through data, enhance open data, coaching others, data surveillance, and data sustainability. And then I'm going to share with you through the chat the link to these presentations so you can have access to the full grid we produce, I mentioned, and the step 2 presentation, because this is the 3rd step. And then Rina invited us to analyze the overlaps in advanced data practices, like, for example, the overlaps between artificial intelligence and data science. And we focus the step 3 very much on the green area, which was the very specific area of data literacy, whereas we went on contributing to the other groups. this is something that happened between the group well-being, health and well-being, Anicia, I don't know if you are there. What happened is Anicia told me this scheme is not, this Venn diagram is not enough to capture the idea of the domain expertise. Like, for example, what happens when data and data science crosses the line of several areas of domain, the domain expertise, like, for example, the case of health and well-being. So as you can see, it's very, I mean, there are several overlaps, and we decided to contribute to the other groups and, I mean, focus the very specific areas of data literacy in the group. And here, since I shared the presentation, you can have access to the Mentimeter. Rina, I think it's a bit long to engage, I mean, in all the 25 statements we develop in these 5 areas of the DIGCOMP, like trying to match the data literacy statements with the areas of the DIGCOMP. But if you want, you can select one of these DIGCOMP areas and participate to the Menti and take a look at the statements and, I mean, to decide whether the statements match the DIGCOMP area. So I'm going to just, I see Leo's comment. I'm going to share the Menti, one of the Menti, for you to see how are we developing the statements, building on the process, sharing, I mean, information and discussing the very approaches to data literacy. But it's upon to you. If you want to participate in the process, you please do feel free to do it. So if I move to for example, information and data literacy. Sorry. So you will see we propose here several statements relating data literacy, and that there are agreements and disagreements. Like, for example, there is disagreement, more disagreement on I know that or know that there are tasks requiring professional expertise to collect data, scrap data, and generate complex and interactive presentations. Like, I know where to search for help if I see that there is a data interaction that is complex. And there is more agreement on search relevant open data and or contact groups that are active on open data policies and activities. And through this exercise, what we can build is a stronger base to, select the relevant statements for the DIGCOMP, and this is the exercise. So since you have the presentation, I'm going to pass to Leo, please, if you want to comment, make your comment, I see in the chat.
No, it's just a remark from a practitioner who tries to translate this into educational content. And I think that data literacy is much more difficult, for instance, than media literacy, because media literacy, people understand that this is part of their life. Even digital literacy, they understand that this is part of their life sphere, and they're confronted with a lot of the outcomes of media. This is not the case for data. Data touches upon people's life, it influences people's lives, but a lot of people are totally unaware of these processes. So the first step is to make people aware of that. And then, yeah, I think how far can we go? And I think that's a very important one. What do we expect people to know? And can we expect that the whole population actually acquires these types of skills? This was just a critical remark, which we face as an organization, and that's also why, especially for data literacy, we also focus on intermediaries, and we focus on civil society organizations as an intermediary for the public. If we talk about democratic processes, so this was just an observation from a practitioner's point of view that I really like, and I think we have to do these exercises. But on the other hand, we have to realize that we will never achieve high levels of data literacies for certain of those competencies in the whole population. And then the question is, what is the most important?
It's an excellent point, and I asked myself many times while preparing the requirements and analyzing the literature, how close are we from a common citizen competence? It was very difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yes, please.
Yeah. One thing I think is important to understand that in DICCOMP, we are, for example, outlining what we think citizens should know, but we are not saying that everybody should be at the highest level of that let's say continuum of learning. We have, for example, in DICCOMP, we have 8 levels. We are not saying anything in the framework itself that everybody should know at level 4 or level 8 or level 1. That is up to then the training organization or the country, the labor ministry, to say, like, we want certain workers at this level and that level. And then you have the training organizations who engage in that upskilling. So here I think one thing is, I understand the average comment that also Stefano was sharing, like I'm not even able to understand that. But we should not only be fixated that with the thinking that everybody should be at the highest level. We are not defining the level here. We're just defining some things that we think are important for citizens to know, and then the level there can vary a lot. And that's up to other people, other standards, other national regulations, school systems to decide. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but this is this question, where do you prioritize?
Yeah.
And that's indeed, this is our role, I think. But I think it's a difficult one. And that's why we for the moment, more focus on this understanding from a citizen's perspective than, okay, I should finish my argument here, but I mean, this is actually what we're really struggling with.
Yeah, and I think for the European Commission, they having said that, I think the big thing is, like, they think that this is a tool for them also to be sure that, you know, we have the safety aspect taken care of, there's the privacy, there's the personal data, and those all, like, I think these are sort of both the cause that causes the worries, but they also sort of enable these things to happen. The data enables AI. And so that's why we have to have this sort of like, okay, there are risks and then there are benefits, and how do we sort of balance that? So I think that's why the Commission is so keen on pushing these things and saying, like, all citizens should have this. And of course, it is hard, but I think it's not, you know, like my job to say that citizens should be at some level. So that's why in our statements, Leo, I already mentioned that we are not putting any, like in this case, we're not putting any progression level or age requirements linked to it, because this is the dimension 4. And dimension 4 is just to illustrate. What do we mean by digital tools? Remember, we use these terms very loosely in our descriptors. So here we can give more concrete examples. AI, data literacy. Okay, data is now mentioned and data literacy is mentioned in DICCOMP, but AI has never been mentioned. So this is where we can give these examples of very concrete examples that hopefully will help then the trainers and so on.
Hi, I'm sorry, it's Anisi talking.
Hi, Anisia.
I've been listening to everything. Thanks so much for these amazing and interesting ideas regarding data literacy and media literacy. What I feel is that is a fine line related with all the areas, and the safety and well-being area touch each of one, and we feel some difficult to try to select the statements that we collected, because we try to present all the scenarios related with an issue. For example, cryptography. We know that people must use tools that use cryptography, but they also need to know that even when they use it, they could be in danger, if I can say that, if they don't have the malware, if they don't have behaviors related with their data to protect their data. There is different contexts. We can say, if you do this, you will be safe, but there are many behaviors that have to be in consideration when we talk about data, when we talk about safety, and even when we talk on AI. They are so tiny links to each one of them that we have to, when Leo said we can say everything, we can't say all the competences that citizens must meet and they have to achieve to be secure and safe on this digital society. But we can present some scenarios that they can be aware of. And we also, on the literature that we found and all the talking that we did with some of the working groups, we feel that there is a range of statements, and some statements could be more illustrative and others ones not, but in some kind of way they touch the same topic, and but both of the topics talk of different things. What I mean is we have too much synthesis, and we feel that on our working group, but the scope will be which is more important. Who will say that is the citizen in his own context. It's where we feel that, and we try to put this responsibility to the citizen and try to don't write our citizens in a way that push the citizen to think that we already have, but make them think. I don't know if this sounds a little bit confusing, but is what we think in our working group.
Yes, it's complex because it relates to taking responsibility to understand how the devices work and how the data is being collected, and the regulations relating how to protect and how to present the softwares and apps to the citizens. I think Andrea has his hand raised, but what I want to say is that we need to find the balance between a creative approach to data, and we need to become more tech savvy. As I really like it, Andrea's and Data Ninja's work, because they are focusing the development of data science basic skills to relate to data in a comfortable way. And we need to understand where the risks are. This is to find the balance, because otherwise we might be too protective, too reactive, and not proactive, or too proactive and not taking into consideration risk. And Andrea, if you want, and we are about to close.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a quick thought to share with you. Since we are an SME, we every day we need to challenge with the market needs. So one of the main difficulties that we have had in the past is to to spread the concept that data literacy is important and is possible to learn data literacy for everyone. Yeah. So this is the main background that we have so far, but it is a very difficult point to share with others, because when you talk with someone that is not aware about what is data literacy, it is very difficult to explain, to show him or her what kind of competencies they can learn to improve their workflow and so on. But I think that we think that the pandemic changed everything, because dealing with data today is not about data science. We are not in our first let me say time of activities. We taught about data science, but thanks to the pandemic, thanks to other things that happened in our contexts, we have chosen to focus our activity on data literacy, because the competencies that we need are very basic. So what is the problem? Because people, what is the relationship between competencies on data literacy and the aware of people to deal with data about pandemic? Why I have to do my vaccine? Why not? Is this a kind of data literacy knowledge, or is not? So I think that the basic level should be very extended to everyone. So everyone should know what is data and how to deal, how you can trust about data and so on. So the basic level should be for everyone. So, but I am passionate, so probably I have a lot of expectation.
So I think we must wrap up now. Rina, we want to say close the session, but I invite you very warmly to participate and, criticize, reorganize. We need to do this exercise to create a common background for the European practice. Because if every one of us come out with a different data literacy framework, it will be really hard. So it's very relevant to integrate in a synthetic way the DIGCOMP.
Yeah, I would like to also just thank everybody for these presentations. It's been very interesting to hear about the work at the other European projects, and there's definitely something for us as a takeaway that we can integrate into the DIGCOMP framework. And I would please, of course, invite you also to be part in the step 4, where we are really now working on fine-tuning our statements. There's still time to feed in ideas that are lacking, or keep being critical friends, saying like, no, you're aiming too high, or you're aiming too low, or you're not seeing this. So everything is also part of the DIGCOMP process. DIGCOMP has been there for 10 years now. When it started, there was a lot of discussion and consensus building around it. So we want to keep that open, so that everybody who's new now to the DIGCOMP, that they can also feel in the future, when they see the result in next year, that they feel like, well, I actually contributed that, and I was part of the discussion, and I had certain buy-in to it. So that's our aim with going out at this level. So please be involved and be critical and be friendly. That's, I think, the main message. And at the same time, I wish everybody a good start of June. This is so exciting that we are already there. So thanks, everybody. And Juliana, thanks mostly.
Thank you so much to all the